Have you ever decided to read more books, but always find an excuse not to? Trust me, you are not alone. Between the daily grind and constant distractions, finding time to read can seem almost impossible. But I discovered a technique so simple that it completely changed my relationship with books: the 2-minute rule. This strategy, based on a concept I read in James Clear's Atomic Habits, allowed me to go from having no time to read to devouring over 100 books without feeling pressured. Little by little, I developed the habit of reading every day, and the benefits have been extraordinary. Today, I want to share with you my personal experience applying this technique and some of the valuable lessons I have learned along the way. Let's get started. What is the 2-minute rule? The 2-minute rule is a surprisingly effective strategy for developing new habits, based on the idea that any action, no matter how small, can make a big difference if repeated consistently. The essence of this rule is simple. When you want to start a new routine, it's best to start with something so easy and short that it's impossible to fail, something you can do in just 2 minutes. Although it seems too simple to be useful, therein lies its true power. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, he explains that the most important thing when building a habit is not how much time you put into it at the beginning, but how consistently you repeat it. The goal is not to make huge progress right away, but to create a solid foundation for a behavior that you can maintain over the long term. By making it so accessible, you eliminate any excuse not to start. This rule can be applied to many areas of life: exercise, meditation, writing, and in my case, reading. I started using the 2-minute rule for reading, committing to just reading a couple of minutes each day. What I found is that once I started, I tended to continue reading for longer. Little by little, this little routine became a daily habit that allowed me, without stress or pressure, to read more than 100 books in a relatively short time. The key is to start, however small the step, and the magic of repetition will do the rest. How I started with the 2-minute rule. It all started when I realized I always had an excuse not to read. Between work, social media, and Netflix, I always found something more urgent or entertaining than opening a book. But deep down I knew that reading was key to continuing to grow, both personally and professionally, and I didn't want to keep putting off something so important. After reading Atomic Habits, I decided to apply the 2-minute rule to reading. My goal wasn't to devour books for hours, but to commit to reading at least 2 minutes a day, every day, without exception. If after those 2 minutes I wanted to stop, no problem. The only thing that mattered was to start. At first it seemed silly. I thought, what can change with just 2 minutes of reading? But amazingly, those 2 minutes turned into 5, then 10, and on some days, 30 minutes or more. Best of all, I didn't feel pressured or obligated to keep reading for very long. The only real commitment was to those first 2 minutes of reading. The funny thing was that by taking away the expectation of reading a lot, I started to enjoy the process more. I no longer saw it as a chore. In fact, those little moments became something I looked forward to, and little by little, reading went from being a challenge to a habit. And so, without realizing it, I ended up reading more than 100 books. All thanks to those little 2 minutes a day. I quickly discovered that the key to reading more isn't how much you read in a single day, but doing it consistently. It's easy to get excited at first and want to devour a book in one sitting, but that initial energy is rarely sustained. This is where the 2-minute rule comes in. It's not about quantity, but about building the habit. Neuroscience backs this idea up. Forming a habit doesn't depend on the length of the activity, but on consistent repetition. Over time, reading became as natural as brushing my teeth or drinking coffee in the morning. What I have learned from reading more than 100 books. After reading over 100 books using this rule, I realized that I have learned a lot. Each book taught me something valuable, and those lessons have made a huge difference in my life. Here I share with you some of the most important lessons that have accompanied me on this path of continuous learning. There are no excuses when something is easy enough. Before I adopted this rule, I was always finding an excuse not to read. I don't have time, I'm tired, today is not a good day. These were all reasons that kept me from my goals. But when I started telling myself that I only needed to spend 2 minutes reading, those excuses started to fade away. Who can't find 2 minutes in their day? That little mindset freed me from the pressure of having to read for hours. The funny thing is that this shift in focus didn't just help me with reading, it applied to other areas of my life as well. If you really care about something, it's best to start small. Whether it's exercising, meditating, or learning something new, the important thing is to take that first step no matter how small. Sometimes, the key to moving forward is breaking through the barriers we put on ourselves. At the end of the day, when something is easy enough, there are no excuses. So, if there's something in your life that you want to achieve, start now, even if it's just for 2 minutes a day. That's the magic of taking the first step. Small actions have a massive impact. At first, reading just a few minutes a day didn't seem to make much of a difference. But over time, those minutes added up. Within a week, I'd read maybe a full hour. Within a month, that translated to 4 hours or more. So little by little, book by book, I managed to read over 100 books without feeling overwhelmed. The great thing about this is that consistency really does work magic. Every little bit of effort counts, and the key is to maintain that habit over the long term. For example, one day you might read for just 2 minutes, and the next you get so comfortable that you end up reading 10. That accumulation of small daily actions turns into big results over time. And before you know it, you're on a path of continuous learning. Consistency is the real key to achieving goals, no matter how small the actions. And if you find today's content interesting, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Let's continue. The quality of books matters as much as the quantity. As I progressed through my reading journey, I realized that not all books are created equal. Some left me with profound lessons that truly changed my way of thinking, while others only served as passing entertainment. This led me to be more selective about what I read, prioritizing books that truly offered me something valuable. The initial 2 minutes were key to helping me filter out the books. If after a few minutes I didn't feel intrigued or interested, I would simply move on to another. I wasn't forcing myself to continue reading something that didn't provide me with anything. Not only did this save me time, but it also made my reading moments more meaningful. Instead of feeling trapped in books I didn't enjoy, I was able to focus on the ones that truly resonated with me. So, in the end, I learned that the quality of what you read is just as important as the quantity. It's not just about accumulating books, but about finding those that are really worthwhile and that contribute to personal growth. Thus, my passion for reading multiplied, and each book became a valuable experience. Reading more improves other areas of life. The funny thing about this reading habit is that its benefits are not limited to just reading. As I spent more time with books, I started to notice improvements in other areas of my life. For example, my writing skills improved a lot. Reading more helped me see how other authors structure their ideas, use language, and tell stories, and that was reflected in my own way of writing to better express myself. Additionally, my ability to concentrate has also improved. Before, it was easy to get distracted by my cell phone or social media, but by committing to those short moments of reading, I began to train my mind to focus better. Now I can sit and concentrate on a task for longer periods without losing attention. My creativity also skyrocketed in a surprising way. By reading books of different genres and topics, doors to new ideas and perspectives opened up for me. I began to see connections between concepts that I hadn't even considered before. This had a direct impact on my work and personal relationships, as I now have a greater variety of ideas to share and discuss. Reading is an inexhaustible source of learning. Reading is an inexhaustible source of learning. And one of the most valuable things I discovered is that no matter how many books you read, there is always something new to learn. Each book is like a door that leads you to a new perspective, a fresh idea, or a different way of seeing the world. What I love most about reading is how it teaches you to be humble. Just when you think you understand a topic, you come across a book that opens your eyes to aspects you hadn't even considered. And that's the amazing thing about reading. It keeps you constantly evolving. Another thing I learned is that it's not just about accumulating knowledge, but how you apply what you learn in your daily life. Every lesson I take from a book, I try to apply in some way, whether it's in my work, in my relationships, or in my personal growth. One of the questions I often get when I talk about my experience is, how do you stay motivated to keep reading day after day? The truth is that motivation is not something we are born with. it is something we build. Let's look at some tips that will help you maintain the reading habit. Set a fixed schedule. While the 2-minute rule gives you flexibility, having a set time to read can make all the difference. Imagine that every night, right before you go to bed, you set aside 2 minutes to read. By doing so at the same time every day, you eliminate the need to decide when to do it, which saves you mental energy. Little by little, reading becomes part of your daily routine. That consistency is what makes the habit take hold effortlessly. The important thing is to get started, and before you know it, you'll be reading more than you ever imagined. Always have a book at hand. One of the biggest enemies of the reading habit is not being prepared. Always make sure you have a book on hand, whether it's in physical or digital format. That way, when you have those 5 or 10 free minutes during the day, like when you're waiting for something or taking a break, you can take advantage of it to read a little. Don't underestimate those little moments, because they add up to much more than you think. Having the book ready eliminates the excuse of "I don't have time" and allows you to turn those dead moments into opportunities to keep moving forward. Set small goals. While reading 100 books sounds like a giant goal, it wasn't something I set out to do from the start. I started with smaller goals, like reading 1 book a month. By reaching those goals, I felt motivated to keep reading more. The key is not to overwhelm yourself with big numbers right from the start. The important thing is to take that first step and enjoy the process. Little by little, without realizing it, you'll have read more than you imagined. If you're looking to improve in any area of your life, whether it's reading or any other habit, I encourage you to try this rule. It's so easy that you have no excuse not to do it. And over time, you'll see how those small daily actions transform into big results. Have you started using this strategy to create a reading habit or any other habit? Leave us your answer. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future content. See you in the next video.